Hayley McQueen, welcome to the Integral Chat. Thank you for joining us. I thought we'd start with something that we both know about very well, and that's working in football as a woman. Time has flown by, and I can't even remember how long ago it was when we both sort of started to work in football at the same time. But tell me what it was like for you when you first started working in this industry, like how you were received, how you felt about being a woman in a man's world.
Yeah, I think it was very different when we both started out. I mean, I graduated in 2002, like 20 million years ago, and worked, luckily, behind the scenes for quite a long time. So I didn't actually start really presenting until I was almost 30 years old. So I'd luckily done a lot of stuff behind the scenes, worked as a production coordinator, built up a bit of confidence, built up kind of my knowledge. I was watching a heck of a lot of football. So I always knew that I knew what I was talking about in terms of football. I love golf as well. My granddad grew up watching cricket, and I've got a family who are in the northeast and near Leeds who obviously tick the rugby league box. So I've always been a bit of an all-rounder when it comes to knowing lots about sport. But my life was just football, growing up with a dad who played, managed, coached, scouted, which is why I think I have a really good understanding of the game, because I've seen it from every aspect, I suppose, from every angle, from dealing it with my dad. It felt quite natural for me to just work in football, like a continuation of where I'd gone from family life, but it was very much football. Social media wasn't really very big when I first started out. I think also people didn't maybe take me very seriously. So I would turn up to an interview and they'd just be like, oh, who's this girl? And it was a bit of a novelty. Now it's not a novelty, but you could get away with a little bit more. I think I definitely used it to my advantage and thought, well, okay, there might be questions that I would ask that a male journalist could ask that could be taken very differently. Or maybe, I don't know, when I was interviewing Sir Alex Ferguson, he sort of treated me a little bit differently and was a little bit more careful because he just saw me as this young girl and maybe didn't treat me that seriously. I don't mean that in a bad way. He was just being a little bit more careful because he was protecting me a bit more. So I would then start, okay, so I'd start then gradually as the years went on. And when I was at MUTV before I was at Sky, got a little bit more brave with sort of my questioning. And it was different working for a club channel because everything is sort of rose-tinted glasses. Yeah. So I had to very much change tact when I came to Sky Sports because you're having to ask the hard-hitting questions. But because I was in a newsreader role, I could sort of just establish myself, make a name for myself, have a reputation as hopefully a good broadcaster, which would then enable me to go and do interviews, and then hopefully by that point be slightly respected. And by then I was in my 30s, not really caring what anybody thought. I think if I were to enter into this world right now with the social media how it is, it would be very different. I think I would be a lot more fragile, but I was very, very naive. Yeah.
Did anyone ever say to you as you were coming through, oh, she's only there because of her looks, or she's only there because she's Gordon McQueen's daughter?
Oh, yeah.
They obviously didn't know your background. I remember when I first started live reporting, they assumed that I'd just been thrown in just like that. They hadn't seen the kind of the 10 years previously, whereas I'd worked behind the scenes and I'd worked my arse off, basically. It was just like, oh, who's this girl talking about football?
Yeah, oh no, definitely. It was a bit of a theme. You look at Gabby Logan, well, you don't say now, or that she's there because she's Terry Yorath's daughter. She's bloody good at what she does. Kelly Cates, daughter of Kenny Dalglish, Kirsty Gallagher, daughter of Bernard. But it was because we grew up in this environment that was so very different to lots of other females who were not studying sports journalism. It's really popular now, and thank God it is. But at the time, it was so very rare to try and find a female who had the education and the background. So a lot of it was
interested in it as well.
Interested, yeah. And actually not being in awe of interviewing big name footballers because we've been around them. I've grown up with them. And it was great. I've got my little black book of all my different contacts and people I can just call up. And was never afraid to do that. But yeah, I definitely got lucky with my dad, but like to think I have proven myself and don't really think about that anymore.
What about the darker side of social media? Because I know that you went through something quite serious personally. You were working in Scotland in the Scottish football.
Yeah.
Tell us about that and tell us what happened and how bad it actually got.
Yeah, it was serious. And I even look back now and think, I don't think it was dealt with very seriously, even by sort of around work. I was really struggling with it. It was like, oh, don't worry. It's someone just sending you a message, basically wishing death upon me. I was pregnant at the time. And I remember this one instance. I was flying up to Scotland. We'd sometimes fly, sometimes get the train, depending on where I was reporting on games, presenting the games. And I had done a post-match analysis of a match. It was this one particular time. It was a Rangers game, but there was a big Celtic story at the time about Brendan Rodgers potentially leaving and going to Leicester. But Rangers had just I think they'd lost the game that we were reporting on. It might have been against Aberdeen. I can't even remember where we were, but we would normally just focus on the teams that have just played. But we brought in a conversation about Celtic, and we'd heard a little bit of a rumour that Dermot Desmond had this meeting with Brendan Rodgers, and my producer was really keen to get this information out there. And I was feeling a bit nervous about it because it was like, well, we're just speculating. And it's after a Rangers game. Rangers fans are going to be watching and wondering why we're suddenly now talking about Celtic, because we talk about Celtic all the time. At the time, they were, winning the league every year. They were, dominating. And it was like, oh, she just wants to, it was a negative story. It wasn't like we were bigging up Celtic, and they just won. They just won that afternoon as well. It wasn't the game that was live on Sky. And suddenly we were bringing up this story, and I'd headed home, and I had a barrage of tweets. But one of them that was most disappointing was it was a journalist who had tweeted something about, oh, Hayley McQueen, this, and this says this. And I was like, I was actually just relaying some facts and talking over a graphic. And I was very, very careful about not to have an opinion about this, because I understand the sensitivities between Rangers, Celtic, and having an allegiance to one or the other, which I don't. Unfortunately, there were articles from Shoot magazine back in the 70s, when my dad had said he was brought up watching Rangers. My dad actually coached and managed at St Mirren, so I used to go to Love Street quite a bit. My mum had a business in Paisley, so if I were to have a Scottish team, it probably would have been St Mirren. They were promoted when I was covering the Scottish Premiership, so that was great. My dad's best friend, my uncle, they're actually all Celtic fans, but no one ever brought that up. It was just, oh, she wants to just shoot down Celtic. And this tweet from this journalist got retweeted and liked over 1,000 times. And before you knew it, I had said something about Celtic that wasn't my opinion. It was, I am relaying some information which has been told to me by a producer. It was just awful. And I was just stating a few facts, but we were obviously discussing a story that was slightly negative about Celtic and why Brendan would move on and why he'd want to go to Leicester. I mean, look what's happened now. Yeah. It did work out for him, didn't it? But and again, I had
got death threats.
Yeah, I had somebody sending me a message and basically saying, "Oh, these small planes that had." It was the next time we'd gone up to. It was either Dundee or Aberdeen, and we were on a small plane, and I was eating a Tunnocks tea cake and drinking a can of Iron Brew. I was like, couldn't get more Scottish. About to enjoy my next venture up to the Highlands or wherever it was. Maybe it was Ross County, and they said, "Oh, those are small planes. You basically deserve to die in a plane crash." Or someone's like, "Oh, it'd be better off if you died and you didn't present Scottish football anymore." And I that was the biggest one I had, and then I had a couple of others where people were just like, "Oh, I hope something bad happens to your baby. You don't basically deserve to be doing this. You're blank." Weirdly, not as bad as it perhaps would have affected other people. I just sort of looked, it was awful because I couldn't then respond. I didn't want to respond. I didn't want to respond to say, "How disgusting is that? You wish death on me," and report it to the police or whatever. I didn't really bother. I told my producer, I told a few people at the time, and nothing was ever really done about it.
I remember you being quite upset about it.
Yeah, I remember being upset because I didn't want to do that story. I didn't want to discuss that post-match. It was hard. I didn't realize it was going to be as hard as it was, and that I'd have to be as careful about my choice of words, and even something that I would put out on social media, like promoting. Again, we used to get a lot of stick as well about not covering enough of the games that weren't Old Firm. But it's not my decision which games we decide to broadcast live, but a lot would fall on me. I was like, I'm just simply here to bring the best out of my guests and to bring this program to life and to bring you the information, the facts, and as much interesting stuff as I possibly can to make this insightful, and the commentators there to bring, you know, everything to life. Co-commentators there to have an opinion, and does get a lot of stick. Poor Andy Walker, I don't know how he deals with it. But yeah, I don't have to deal with that anymore up in Scotland. But I still love my Scottish football. I follow it. I really miss it. I miss being around an amazing group of people that I worked with on the outside broadcast. I miss visiting stadiums. I'm obviously in a studio now, and I really miss covering football. But with a daughter and traveling away most weekends, obviously it was something that was just not realistic for me to return to. Amy Barber obviously covered my maternity leave, and I couldn't have travelled up to Scotland anyway because of COVID. So it made sense to have a Scottish presenter based up in Scotland covering the Scottish games. And I'd still like to have had a part in that. I would have actually still quite liked to maybe shared it if I had a bit of a choice. But I think they just wanted the same face. She's really good at what she does. She lives up there. I'm half English, half Scottish. Who knows what I am? I just say I'm British, but obviously I support Scotland. Whereas she's probably a lot more knowledgeable about the Scottish game, but I just know I'm a really good presenter, or so I'd like to think. I do really miss it, but I don't miss the abuse and checking my phone after a game before I'm about to get on the flight, hoping that I'm not going to be, you know, killed in a car crash, a plane crash or something, for people to be celebrating it. Like, what the hell?
I knew your dad very well before I even met you, because he worked on Soccer Saturday. He was one of the panelists for years. Now, he's obviously suffering with vascular dementia, which has been in the news, and you've bravely spoken about that. Can you tell us how he is at the moment?
Yeah, it's weird because he's still here, and sometimes I feel like I'm talking about him as if he isn't. Like, he was this, he was the life, and I'm like, no, he is still here. Yeah, he's not the life and soul of the party. He still likes to be surrounded by people. I just think it's come in the worst possible time, because he's been at home a lot, not seeing people physically. We haven't been able to have people pop in and out of the house, and I think you have to keep your mind and your brain working. He unfortunately has lots of problems with his ankles. He's had them fused, he's had an ankle replacement. So he's not been that mobile for quite some time. He kind of shuffles about, but you ask him how he is, he's like, oh, I'm brand new. And he'd always said, well, at least if I don't have my physical health, I've still got my mental health. His worst fear was to have Alzheimer's or dementia. We don't actually have it in our family. It doesn't run in the family. My grandparents died fairly young. My grandma was a lot younger than what my dad is now, and she passed away. But it's just really sad that somebody whose mind was so sharp and so witty and so everything, that's just gone. He'll still have a laugh. He still knows who we all are, which is great. His short-term sort of memory is not there. Sort of getting a bit muddled about what day it is, what year it is, but he will sit and just obsessively watch a lot of football and some other weird stuff on TV as well. But he likes to watch things from the past, because it's like he knows, he is very aware of his illness. But it's just hard when his eating's not great, because there's of that there's something that doesn't work, that processes the brain's signal to swallow your food, so he really struggles to eat. And that was one of his great joys in life, eating and drinking. He doesn't really drink much alcohol now. He'll still have the odd glass of wine, because why not? He might as well, but he doesn't really drink. He'll go to the pub, but just for an hour to be around people, and then he gets tired and just wants to come home. But it's the lethargy. He gets tired, he nods off every now and again, because your brain and your mind is working really hard to try and remember things. I just feel really sad that when I see all these kind of other 60 or early 70-year-olds, you know, going walking and staying fit and going out and socializing, enjoying the money that they've earned in life, and they're just not able to do that. And my mum is obviously sole carer of him now, and probably could do with a little bit of help, but doesn't want to, because she's just, well, I want to look after him. He's my husband. He's given me so much in my life with his career. I want to be there for him, but it is constant. He wakes up really early in the mornings and gets ready and dressed for the day. He has his shower and a shave. He's not going anywhere, but at least he still like wants to get dressed and
that's massive. That is.
Yeah, which is great, but it's just a shame that normally he'd be someone that is just constantly joking. He's a real joker. He's a real fun character, always has been, and that's just gone. And I think that's what we find hard.
When did you realise, or when did you get that diagnosed that it was the link was made between football, heading the ball, and his disease?
Yeah, I think we had lots of tests through the NHS that came through dementia. And it was when we went to see a specialist up in Newcastle, who then obviously realised what my dad did for a living and looked at sort of his scans and things and said it's definitely vascular. That makes sense. I was in touch with Willie Stewart, the doctor who's leading a lot of the investigation and campaigning for this to be looked into and the links. And I had a good chat with him and looked a lot of the information. It did all kind of correlate. Mum's in touch with the group now. It's good, actually. Jeff Astel's wife and family, she's in touch with them and they kind of compare notes. So my mum gets a little bit of help through talking with others. I don't think he thought it was dementia. Maybe he was in denial that it was dementia. And when they obviously got the diagnosis, he knew exactly what that meant. And yeah, I think he was really truly gutted by it because it's something that you can't control or do anything about. You just have to manage it.
He doesn't have any regrets about his career. He wouldn't want to change that in any way. But how does that, you have to kind of look back at it in a bittersweet way almost.
You do. Yeah, he definitely said he wouldn't change it. He said he wouldn't have scored the goals, important ones like Scotland against England, which we'll hopefully see again on June the 18th. At your house, I think we're coming to. He scored really important goals. And of course, training with his heading led to making sure that he could leap like that with his height and get his head onto the odd ball. He was obviously a defender, but was really good in the air. And he said I didn't even know this. And I said, oh, Dad, about heading the ball. I said, you were like a prolific header of the ball. He went, oh, yeah. He said, but it wasn't in the games. He said, when I used to stay back from training, he said it was either at the Cliff at United, but definitely before that when he was at Leeds. He said, I would stay back after training and be there as practice for the keeper. So the keeper would, throw or kick the ball out. My dad would just head it over and over and over. And he said that's what happened when they were kids. Growing up in Scotland and tenement buildings, you'd have a brick wall and you just head the ball to the wall. That was your training. You just do it over and over and over and over. And they were very different footballs back then, of course. I don't know whether if realistically you sat down and said, right, you could rewind, would you do that? But he said he doesn't have any regrets. His only regret would be that he didn't pass this information on for the next generation of players to be warned about the consequences of heading a ball so that others might not be in this position.
Do you think players now taking it seriously? Because when you're younger, you think you're never going to get old, but you do.
Oh, yeah, you do. I know, right?
You really do.
Crops up. Before you know it, you're 40.
Exactly. How do you, there are these campaigns and you've spoken about it, you've been on the news and you've been interviewed about it, but how do you get young players, male and female, to take this seriously?
Yeah.
And what do you think we need to do for young children growing up playing football?
Yeah. I think constantly campaigning, constantly keeping it in the news, constantly making sure that changes are being made. They'd obviously ruled out heading of the ball in young children up in Scotland from all levels.
Yeah.
They'll do that down here. They'll limit the amount of heading that you do in training at a professional club. I mean, that documentary that was done by Anne Shearer was brilliant because I think people started to, really sit up and take notes. I think when you have high profile people who are telling you about the risks, when you see that, Jack Charlton passing away from dementia, when you actually start to see this generation of player now dying of this illness or their lives being cut short because of dementia or Alzheimer's, you start to think, okay, this is real, this is happening, and I don't want to end up like that. But I'm just still kind of learning about the disease, learning how to make my dad's life more comfortable and coming to terms with that and knowing that my dad isn't going to be around maybe for the next 10, 15 years like we'd hoped he would. So I'm just trying to help my dad before I can then start to help other people, because I don't want to put out information that's either not correct or not factual. So I'm working with Sport United Against Dementia, Sky are working in conjunction with them as well. So I get sent regular updates and emails about a lot of the work that's going on, and get sent a lot of facts and information about this disease so that I can be really well informed. So if I am having to go and speak about it, raise awareness or pass on a message, it's not just me talking about, oh, my dad's this, and this. And I don't want it to be, woe is me, woe is my family. I want to make sure I can educate, but I'm still just learning myself. I didn't really know much about it at all before this, because we've never encountered it in our family or with anybody that I know, really.
Well, good luck with it. Thank you very much for talking to the Integrity Chat. Just finally then, I take it England, Scotland, you're going to be supporting Scotland.
I will, but and Scotland fans will hate me for saying this. Obviously, when Scotland go up against England, I want Scotland to win. But I also enjoy watching England play. I support Man United. I love watching the best players play great football on the biggest of stages. And I do always like to see England do well. A lot of Scotland fans can't get their head around that. Like, I was born in Manchester. I was brought up for most of my life now in England. Yeah, I lived in Scotland until I was 16. My dad is a proud Scotsman. And it's really hard because I am torn. My other half is born in Germany, lived there all his life, but he's from 2 Turkish parents. So he supports both Germany and Turkey. So we've got 4 nations now that we don't mind doing all right. I'm definitely not going to be supporting Germany, but Turkey, okay, I'll let that one for the little one. She's got a Scotland kit. Just got her a new one for the summer, which fits, which is great. But yeah, I'll be quite happy for England to do well, but obviously Scotland.
You are a proud member of the Tartan Army.
Absolutely, yes. Who hate England and will be wanting them to crash out at the group stages. And I'm really sorry if that sounds terrible as a Scotland fan who doesn't mind England doing well. But I love Gareth Southgate, so there's that as well.
You're torn. I get it. I won't let you into my barbecue if you want Scotland to win anyway.
In a Scotland top.
Joking.
Coming in a shirt.
Thank you, Hayley. Thank you for your time. It's been brilliant talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the chat.